Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Grading in Peerceptiv, Settings, Variations, and Best Practices. Today, we're going to be covering everything grades in Peerceptiv, and hopefully you'll be able to get some additional insight about how to adjust your settings, how instructors should be involved in the grading process, and some other information about grading that will help you use Peerceptiv in a way that's desirable for you. So for our agenda today, we're going to start with the overall grades, discuss some of our basic settings, how to add late penalties, how teachers should be involved, and some best practices in general about the grading in Peerceptiv. First of all, our overall grade breakdown. So when a student receives an overall percentage grade from Peerceptiv, that grade includes a lot of information other than just their overall grade. So it's made up of 3 different parts. Let's describe what those are here. The first part of the grade that a student receives is called the document grade. In the document grade, that's calculated using accuracy adjusted peer ratings using the rubric that the instructor provides. So the system will take all of the peer ratings, adjust them for the accuracy of each reviewer, and then assign a document grade. That document grade is relative compared to the other students in the course, so just keep that in mind as well. Then the second part of the grade is the reviewing grade. So for the review grade, students, this is where we incentivize good reviewing behavior. So we want them to be accurate as far as their ratings go, and we want them to be comprehensive when it comes to their commenting prompts. We want them to provide some strengths of the document and then ways that they can improve in the future. So if a student does this well, they'll receive a high review grade. This score is also relative, and we use our algorithms here to calculate that accuracy. The helpfulness comes from the feedback of the authors of the documents who, when they receive those comments, can rate them for helpfulness. And then the final part of our grade is the task grade. The task grade is a simple completion grade of how many of the elements of the Peerceptiv process did you complete for any particular assignment. We take those 3 grades, we combine them together, and then that overall grade we pass back to the LMS if you're using it in an LMS, or provide in our gradebook within Peerceptiv if you're using it on the standalone side. All right, let's talk about our first style of document grading, and that's called curved grading. For curved grading, the document and review grades will be curved based on the settings you choose here. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see our assignment creation wizard. The section that we're working with now are the grading options at the top, the grading style. So when you select curve, the next thing you should select is your mean and standard deviation. Now, for those of you like myself who aren't great mathematicians, let's look at a visual representation of what that curve will do to the student grades. So the chart on the left side of the screen here shows that most of the students will fall somewhere very close to an 85 score. And then the rest of the students will be distributed out from there on both sides. You can see that the number of students who are receiving lower grades diminishes here, and same thing on the upper end. So students who receive grades higher than 85, it reduces as it goes up. When you choose 85-10, about 65% of your students will be within 1 standard deviation from 85, and then the next section will be 2, and then there'll be a very minuscule percentage that will fall into that 3rd standard deviation. If you have more questions about curve grading and any questions about any of these topics we're going to cover, we have more detailed explanations in our knowledge base, so you can search there. Also, please feel free to reach out to our support desk at any time. We really like to discuss how to set up assignments, and we want your vision for how Peerceptiv is going to work in your course to match what happens. And the best way to do that is just reach out to our support desk as you set up an assignment, and we'll be glad to review your settings to make sure they align with what you're envisioning happening. The second style of grading in Peerceptiv is for benchmark grading. The document grade and benchmark grading is based on instructor-generated percentage grades. So the way this works is the instructor will, the instructor will receive, after the review period, the 5 highest scoring documents and the 5 lowest scoring documents according to the peer review. When the instructor gets those documents, they'll view them and then assign a percentage grade for the high set and for the low set. So what this does is, you can see here, there are the grades that the instructor provided. And then the orange or red dots here on your screen are the ones that the instructor generated, and the blue dots are the ones that our system automatically generated. So what this does is it allows you to set the high point for your assignment and the low point for your assignment. This is a really great way for instructors to get involved because they can kind of get a snapshot for how the student's work is performing on their rubric. It also allows them to adjust the grading scale a little bit. So if the students didn't perform very well, you can adjust it down. If they exceeded your expectations, you can adjust it up. So this is a really great way, maybe in a high enrollment class where an instructor could get involved in grading some of the work. Keep in mind with benchmark grading that the only part of the grade that's affected here is the document grade. The review grade will still use the mean and standard deviation you chose in the grade settings. So even though the document settings aren't the document grades aren't curved here, the review grades still will be curved. All right, let's move on to our next section, which is late penalties. You can apply late penalty to document submissions and late reviews in Peerceptiv, and those penalties are deducted from that portion of the grade. So if you assign a 1% late penalty, that will only be applied to the part of the grade where it was late. So if they had a late submission, their document grade would be affected. If they gave late reviews, then their review grade would be affected. So it's not an overall percentage, it's a portion of a percentage. And the way that you change those is after you've set up your assignment, you go to your settings and you click edit, and you can see here that you can adjust the grace periods for late reviews and for late documents. Now, let me give a very strong recommendation here that you do not include a grace period for late reviews. We see that the student workflow is interrupted often by a late grace period for late reviews, because once the grace period opens, students who are waiting to receive their feedback and complete their back evaluations will have to wait until that grace period is over. So there's a period of time after reviews before back evaluations when the only folks who can submit any work are those who haven't done their reviews and who are submitting late work. So really you could be making your entire class wait for 1 or 2 students to do some late work. If you would like to allow a longer window for reviews, that's what we would suggest, is that just add a day or 2 to your reviewing window to allow folks to submit late if they need to. Okay, so those are late reviews, curved and benchmark grading. Please feel free, if there's any questions, put them in the chat and we'll get to them later. For teacher involvement, now there are so many different ways that an instructor can get involved in the Peerceptiv process. While our system is designed to go from submission to grade passback with 0 teacher intervention at all, our grades would be as valid and reliable as that way as if an instructor was involved. We do offer ways for teachers to get involved if they choose. So let's go over a few of those and talk about the best practices around that. The first way a teacher can get involved is by reviewing some of the documents or all of the documents along with the peers. And if they do that, there's a number of options that you have to value the impact of your review on any document. The first, and you can see those here in as you set up your new assignment using the wizard, you can choose any of these instructors review is settings. The first one is just 1 in the set. So if you choose this, your review will act just like any of the peer reviews and will be equal to those other reviews. The system reads your involvement just as if you were another peer. The only caveat being that your review will be considered 100% accurate. So you will not, so your review will always be 100% accurate. The second setting here is a sliding scale. If you choose this when you review a peer work, your rating will be adjusted for a percentage. So if you choose sliding scale, you can set your impact to be any percentage you'd like, from 1% up to 99%, even 100% of the review. So if you wanted to have a different level of impact other than just 1 in the set, you can choose sliding scale. And then finally, the last one is override student reviews. So with this setting, anytime you review a peer work, your ratings will be the only thing that informs their document grade. So be careful with this setting. If you want to use it, that's great. But it will devalue the peer ratings 100%. But it is an option that is available to you if you choose that. Now, keep in mind, no matter which of these settings you choose, the teacher ratings are considered 100% accurate, and the student accuracy will be adjusted accordingly. So even if you just go in and review a handful of documents, any reviewers that have also reviewed those documents, by you adding the expert assessed version of a review, you are helping to adjust their accuracy slightly so that they're more in line with what you would have graded. So this is a really great way to just get involved kind of partially in the assignment and have a really big impact on a number of students and their grades. So what are some best practices about how teachers can get involved in the process? Like I said, there's a number of different ways, and we found over time that these few things can help to increase student buy-in, which is a big part of peer assessment, is making sure that the students really understand the process, appreciate what they're getting out of the process, and their efforts should be earnest efforts as they rate their peers. So here are some best practices for how you can get involved that will help those areas. The first thing, and we always recommend this, especially in those high enrollment courses where there might be 200 students, the instructors or the instructor's TAs, they can also review just as an instructor can, should review a handful of documents in some or all of the assignments. Now, the nice thing about reviewing a handful of documents is that, number one, it will give you a kind of an overall picture of where your students are performing. And you can couple that with the analytics that we're going to provide to you at the end. But it's a nice way to get some hands-on experience with the documents. It also, like we said in the previous slide, will help to adjust the accuracy slightly so that the peers review grade will be just a little bit more accurate, and then the overall grades will be a little bit more in line with what you would have graded. Now keep in mind that all of our research points out that the peer review accuracy is as valid and reliable as one expert assessor, and in some cases we see that it's more accurate. So while our grades and reviewing grades and document grades are all reliable and valid, this just helps to add another layer of stability. If you do review a handful of documents, if you review any documents in the system or plan to review any documents in the system, please make sure to announce this to your students ahead of time. By telling them that we want to really increase student buy-in here. So by telling them that as they rate documents, they should think about what the instructor would rate here and try to align with what they think the instructor would rate. By you jumping in and saying, I'm going to review a handful of these documents along with you, you're not sure which document it is. It could be one that you review. And the more closely you align with my reviews as an instructor, the better your grade is going to be. We've seen that just announcing this and letting students know that this is the process will improve grading behavior. They'll try much more earnestly to match what they think the expert or you would have assigned for this review. So this is a really, really good best practice. Improves student buy-in, keeps them accountable, lets them know that, hey, this isn't just a process that's going to happen independently of my instructor, but rather they're going to be involved in part of this process as well. The third best practice for teacher involvement is conflicting rating documents. So within the system, there is a drop-down, and under that drop-down are listed any documents where at least one of the ratings has a high standard deviation. So that means that the peers might not agree on that rating, how that document is performing. So we provide this right after the reviewing window is closed to the instructors so that you can take a look at these documents and then decide, hey, maybe it's just one outlier rating, or maybe there's just really a general disagreement about how that document is performing on that rating. This is a really great place where teachers should start their involvement. So if you are considering reviewing a handful of documents, start with the conflicting rating documents in the drop-down there, and then move out from there. This is what definitely where we would advise any instructor to begin their rating process. And here's where you're going to find the conflicting rating documents. So let me just point out a few things here. First of all, you'll see that we went to the stats page, and each of your assignments is listed here in the drop downs. We drop down the biology report, click on view detailed stats, and you will see here the conflicting rating document. So These are some just sample students. Any of these, you can click enter teacher review, add your own review. It'll really help these ones in particular with some stability around those rating prompts where there might be some disagreement. All right. So another way that you have to control the grades here in Peerceptiv is to weight the different parts of the grade for the students. So while we pass an overall percentage grade, those 3 parts, document, review, and task, can all be weighted differently depending on different factors of that assignment. And let's look at some of those factors now and discuss when might be some times when you would adjust these grades. Out of the box, our default settings are 40, 40, 20, as you see it here. So 40% for the document grade, 40% for the review grade, and 20% for the task grade. Some situations where you might think about changing those defaults. Number one would be for the type of assignment. So we recently had an instructor reach out from Oregon State, and he wanted to know if he was able to just assign a grade for the reviewing part of the assignment. He wasn't necessarily interested in how well the document's performing, but rather how well his students are performing as reviewers. So he's really focused on those critical analysis skills. He was a CS instructor, and the document that they were submitting was just a simple code file. So he knew that if the code file ran properly, that the document was fine. He didn't need a grade for that. But what he really wanted to learn was how well his students were reviewing other folks' code and identifying areas where they could improve, or mistakes, or omissions. So what he did was he set the document grade to 0%, set the review grade to 100%, and the task grade to 0%. This way, the system will only provide that review grade as the overall percentage. So that was an interesting case study for how to change weightings. Other types of assignments that might be might require changing documents is something we've seen our tool used as kind of a discussion board with incentivization. So rather than having your students submit a short answer on a discussion board where they can go back and forth there, you might want to have them submit that to Peerceptiv. And then that way the students who are commenting on the feedback are being incentivized for the comments that they're providing. So this is another area where you might want to change the percentage and increase reviewing and task and reduce the document grade. All right. Another factor that might influence how you weight the grade is the sequence in the semester. So we frequently see instructors at the beginning of the year want to offer an assignment where their students can get familiar with the Peerceptiv process. And with best intentions, they try to do some sort of almost throwaway assignment that is, how was your summer vacation, or who's going to win the upcoming football game, or something like that. And rather than do an assignment like that, we would encourage you to do a legitimate course assignment, maybe something that's not worth as many points, and then just adjust these different parts of the grade so that the student's impact on their grade isn't that severe. So for example, if you wanted to do a summary of a reading as your first assignment, you would include that. And then instead of having the document grade be very high, you want to increase the review grade and the task grade percentage so that they're going to have a good experience with the system. And as long as they complete the parts of the assignment that they're supposed to, their grade will be fine. So this is a great way to introduce the tool rather than just a fun kind of throwaway assignment. Instead, just adjust the different parts of the grade and how much they're weighted. Another sequence and semester factor might be you have an end of course project, an end of course paper, some sort of term paper, or large lab report. So in those cases, you'd probably want to value the document grade more. So it's the end of the semester. I've used Peerceptiv a few times. I'm less interested in how well they're reviewing because I know that they've already kind of built those skills up. So now you want to jack up the document grade and reduce the review and task grades. This way, the students will be assessed on their document more so than the rest of the process. So this is great for summative assessments, end of course type of materials. Okay, another way that you can affect the grading, and this is the last thing we're going to cover, is weighting the rubric prompts. So within our rubrics, we have commenting prompts and a number of rating prompts. You can choose to weight those rating prompts, and they're relative based on a 1-point scale to anything you like. So if you want to have one rating prompt that's worth 4 times as much as the rest, you can do that. And there are some circumstances where that might be useful. Keep in mind all weights are relative. So the two really examples where this is helpful are, the first is converting a points-based rubric into a Peerceptiv performance level rubric. Using the weighting is a great way to adjust for this. So let's say you have a rubric that's out of 100 and you have one section that's worth 50 points, the other are worth 10 or 20. You can just come up with a formula to convert those points relationally to the weighting in Peerceptiv. One case study I can think of recently came from a teacher training program where the teachers were submitting a rubric for analysis, as well as some reflections about why they designed the rubric the way they did. The reflections, the administrator wanted the reflections to be equally as valuable as the rating prompts on the rubric itself, but there were many more rating prompts about the rubric because it was in much more detail. So what they did was they had 4 rating prompts that were about the rubric and 1 rating prompt that was about the reflections. And they just weighted the reflection weighting prompt for 4 and left the others at 1. And then what this did was made the rubric, the 4 rubric rating prompts equal in total to 1 rating prompt on the reflection. So this is a really great way to adjust your rubric so that the important parts are the ones that have an impact on the student's grades. And you can see here when you're setting up your assignment that this is where you would change the weighting for any of your rating prompts. All right, well, I know we have a number of questions and I'd like to get to those here. So please write any in the chat if you have them, or we can follow up with some answers in the email as well.